Imagine the quiet routine of a 1969 morning. You step out onto your porch, pick up the daily paper, and realize a murderer is speaking directly to you. Across California, ordinary people sat at their breakfast tables, reading first-hand accounts of brutal violence printed right next to the local weather. Most violent offenders flee the scene and pray to be forgotten. This perpetrator actively demanded an audience. He drafted letters to the editors of major publications, outlining a simple extortion plot: print his exact words on the front page, or he would escalate the body count by targeting civilians. This strategy turned the reader into a form of currency. Because the killer's leverage depended on the public's attention, every person who opened the newspaper became a necessary component in his plan to extort the city. He gave himself a name that still haunts law enforcement today: the Zodiac. In his letters, he openly declared that taking human life brought him a thrill. He bypassed the traditional criminal playbook entirely. Instead of waiting for journalists to interpret his crimes, he controlled the narrative, acting as his own aggressive publicist. To him, the police and the press were not authorities to be feared. They were pawns in a twisted game of cat and mouse. By weaponizing the media, he manufactured a dark mythology around himself. He exploited the fact that the police had no legal authority to stop a private newspaper from publishing his letters. Before the letters, there was the blood. He struck in the dead of night, executing brutal attacks on young couples in secluded lovers' lanes. But the investigation quickly revealed a strange anomaly. The most critical pieces of evidence were not recovered from the dirt at the crime scenes. They were delivered straight to the authorities through the Postal Service. He used these very letters to openly mock the detectives tracking him. He pointed out their missteps, laughed at their search grids, exposing their inability to catch him. The physical violence was horrific, but it served a secondary purpose. The victims provided the necessary leverage he needed to guarantee headline dominance and exert psychological control over the police. His erratic, handwritten letters regularly arrived at the desks of San Francisco's top newspaper editors. The terms were explicit: run his messages on the front page, or a weekend killing spree would begin. To ensure maximum engagement, he enclosed complex ciphers, cryptograms that supposedly contained his true legal identity. The threat of mass casualties left editors with no choice. The highest circulation papers in California effectively functioned as a serial killer's personal distribution network. The ciphers triggered a massive public obsession. Ordinary citizens spent their evenings poring over the strange symbols, desperate to crack the code before he could strike again. The police attempted to reclaim control of the narrative, distributing composite sketches to give a terrified public a face to look for. But the puzzles had already done their job. They were a calculated trap, designed to hold the collective attention of the entire nation hostage. And then, right at the peak of his notoriety, the communications stopped. The confirmed killings ceased. He left behind broken ciphers, a massive body count, and an absolute vacuum. There was no final confrontation, no dramatic arrest. The disappearance leaves investigators chasing ghosts. Did he die? Was he locked up for an unrelated crime? Or did he simply decide he had played the game long enough? This lack of resolution creates a unique kind of dread. Without a body or a suspect behind bars, the threat remains active in the back of the public's mind. To this day, the case of the Zodiac Killer remains officially open. 0 arrests, 0 justice for the families he destroyed. It forces us to confront the probability that he lived out the rest of his days hiding in plain sight. He likely walked past police officers, bought groceries, and lived quietly, protected by a wall of silence. He secured a permanent place in the American consciousness, not through his capture, but through an unresolved disappearance that persists in cold case files decades later. The Zodiac demonstrated that a killer could broadcast his crimes to millions, use the press as a megaphone, and still disappear into a crowd of ordinary people. If you enjoyed this dark true crime deep dive, subscribe to Black Evidence. We go deeper into the darkness next time. Stay curious, stay safe, and remember, some secrets are meant to stay buried.